Good morning. Today is Friday, November 15th, 2024. Many times this year, I have quoted Rachel Goldberg-Polin. She and her family live in Israel, originally from the United States. She and her husband, John, are the parents of Hirsch Goldberg-Polin. Hirsch was one of the 6 beautiful hostages murdered in Gaza at the end of August. He had been taken captive last October 7th. And his family was able to bury his body in Jerusalem on September 2nd, just a few weeks ago. Since October 7th last year, Rachel has been one of the most visible and eloquent speakers on behalf of her son and all of the hostages on the world stage. And she has been willing to reveal herself and her feelings in a deeply moving way. And again, I have shared with you many times those words and those appearances. So it's now been 2.5 months since Hirsch's funeral. And Rachel just wrote an article in Times of Israel, which I think is magnificent and deeply important, and it contains 3 crucial points, all of which I think it is incumbent on us to grasp and to absorb. So, of course, Rachel and her family are trying now, 2.5 months later, to try to get back to, in quotation marks, regular life, normal life. She writes, people reach out or stop me to share their pain. Of course, she is instantly recognizable. We have all seen her. We have all watched her. People reach out or stop me to share their pain. They describe how broken they are by the loss of Hirsch and so many others. They go on to share personal losses they have had in their lives. They see my family as a vessel for the throbbing that they feel for hits they have endured. It teaches me, and we really need to hear this, it teaches me that there is an excess and surplus of suffering most people carry in their pockets. It changes over time, but it is always there, being transported around, just waiting for someone to show it to when the opportunity arises. And my presence often is that opportunity. People carry around heavy burdens, many of us. She writes, there are no measuring sticks for aches of agony. Mine is no longer than his or hers. It's different and maybe newer, but pain is pain. John and I discovered this since Hirsch's death, when thousands have come to us and shared their grief and their sorrow each day. When someone stops to tell us of their anguish, it shows how unaddressed and still packed their their satchels are, filled with tears, lumps, and scars. It's true for Jews all over the world, and it is certainly true for Israelis, that there is just an overwhelming amount of sorrow and sadness, and people are just carrying it around. And many of us just don't know exactly what to do with it. So I want to say thank you, Rachel, for giving us the words to try to understand what so many in Israel are going through. It's important for us to know. It affects how we relate to them, how we think of them. And then she goes to a second lesson. And this is a lesson that all of us need to absorb, because we will have friends or family members who are going through some kind of crisis or catastrophe. Each case is different. Each person is different. But this lesson, this next lesson, can be a very helpful lesson for us from one who is going through it now. Rachel says that she learned a very important lesson from a great and famous teacher, Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. I have quoted him to you many times. And he was discussing true chesed, true kindness. This week's parsha is all about chesed, hospitality, haknasas orchim. But Rabbi Wolbe pointed out that this is the most complicated kind of interaction with others because, yes, of course, you can do a favor for somebody. Yes, it exists on a very simple level. But to really do what someone else needs, what will be helpful to someone in a difficult situation, it requires looking at the person in front of us and saying to ourselves, what does this person need? Not, what do I imagine I would need in this person's situation? That is our first instinct. We look at someone who's suffering and we think to ourselves, if I was in their position, what would I need? What would I want? And then we project our wishes onto theirs. Could be we're right, very well could be that we're wrong. It is the hardest of challenges not to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, but to stay in our shoes and look at this person who is not me. How do I allow them that room, that space, that air? It could be that I feel, if I was in their situation, I would want someone to ask me how I'm doing. But maybe what the other person is thinking to themselves is, just let me be. I really just can't talk right now. And it takes such sensitivity and self-discipline to be able to focus not on what I would want, but what is best for that person from their point of view. How do I allow them that room, that space, that air? How do we restrain ourselves from projecting what we need onto the person in front of us? It is so very complicated to do successfully, and we all fail at times. I know I certainly do. I know that I certainly do. But that should be the barometer. Sometimes a person wants to talk. Sometimes a person does not want to talk. Sometimes a person wants to go out for coffee. Sometimes a person does not want to go out for coffee. Sometimes a person wants you to wave at them when you see them. And sometimes a person wants to just be unseen. How do we figure that out? We have to try. And she gives a practical example. And here she is, again, really revealing herself in a very deep way. But it's to help us understand how to act. Listen to this. So she's writing about now, 2.5 months after the funeral. When my girls and I are having, remember, Hirsch has 2 sisters. They have 2 remaining daughters. When my girls and I are having a moment walking, breathing, and smiling, and someone stops us and starts crying, they are robbing us of a moment of respite from the horror we are still digesting. When I'm walking alone with a hat, glasses, and my head down, it is me saying, please, please, let me breathe for a moment without having to also carry your pain. Your pain is as real as mine, but I don't have the strength at this moment to carry yours too. I love you. I'm endlessly grateful to you for loving Hirsch. I love you for loving the hostage families. I love you for trying to help, but please, if you want to help me now, just let me go on walking. My knees are buckling from all the wounds people are sharing. I am just not formidable or powerful enough. Not yet. I'm working on it. I wish to get there because I want all of us to help lift each other. Like the Amish do when they hoist up the frame of a new home, they are all collectively building together. Let's do that. But I'm not ready for that yet. I am not robust enough. Not yet. And then she shares one more practical piece of wisdom that we can all use. She writes, the Jewish people are at a juncture where we have so much to figure out. The nugget of wisdom my mother taught me when I was young keeps nudging at my hip with its hands raised, waiting to be picked up, asking for attention. I'm sorry, but just, the eloquence, the use of metaphor, the sophistication and beauty of her writing, it just overwhelms me. Okay, that's an aside. My mother's friend Danny shared the idea, I have shared this with you before as well, that if we always treat the person next to us as if they are Mashiach, the Messiah, in disguise as a regular person, we will be careful with how we speak and what we do in their presence. And if they choose not to reveal themselves in our lifetime, it will not matter, because we will have behaved respectfully and carefully to that regular person next to us. This is the most decent thing we can do in this complex and loud world piled with confusion and brokenness. Let us work on the lost art of respectfulness. Finally, she writes, there is so much internal disagreement and strife in our Jewish world, and it has not served us well. I think our challenge, as we limp forward toward the light, as we rise from the ashes that are still smoldering, and our cherished 100 hostages in Gaza still languishing there today, is relearning how to listen. We have to master how to give space and oxygen. Allow the person with whom we disagree to share their ideas and to try to understand them. And then they too should allow me to do that. Is it possible? Yes. Will it happen? As I have said since October 7th, 2023, hope is mandatory. It must happen. Deep wisdom. Practical. My friends, I wish you a good day and a beautiful Shabbos. And I look forward to seeing you soon in person.